Hi guys, today's lesson is on Unit 6, Lesson 2, Outcomes of Compound Events. A compound event is just putting together two or more simple events. A good way to see the number of total possible outcomes is to draw a tree diagram. So let's look at example number 1. If we flip a coin and then we roll a die. So if we flip a coin, we have two possible outcomes. We could either land on heads or we could land on tails. If we roll a die, we have 6 possible outcomes. We could land on any of the numbers 1 through 6. So our outcomes, our total outcomes, we could have a head on the first roll, and we could also land on any of the numbers 1 through 6. Or we could land on a tail on the first roll and any of the numbers 1 through 6. So if we total these outcomes in our tree diagram, you can see that we have a total of 12 possible outcomes. Another way to think about it, if I'm flipping a coin, I have 2 possible outcomes. If I'm rolling the die, I have 6 possible outcomes. So if we multiply 2 times 6, we're going to get that same number of total outcomes, which was 12. Let's look at the second example. If you roll a die, you spin the spinner, and you flip a coin, how many possible outcomes are there? So we want to think about if we roll the die, we have 6 possible outcomes. For this spinner, we have 4 possible outcomes. And flipping a coin, we have 2 possible outcomes. So if we take those and we multiply, 6 times 4 is 24, and 24 times 2 is 48. So we have 48 total outcomes if we roll a die, we spin the spinner, and we flip a coin. Example number 3. We're doing things a little different in example number 3. You're going to roll a die, you're going to pick a card, and then you're going to find the sum. How many different sums are possible? So let's make a chart on this one. If we're rolling a die, we could roll the numbers 1 through 6. And picking these cards, we could pick a card that's a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. So let's find the sum of each possibility. So if we roll a 1 the first time and we choose a card that's a 2, our sum would be a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, or an 8, if we're simply adding those together. So if we roll a 1 the first time and we pick a card that's a 3, our sum would be a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, or a 9. If we choose a card that's a 4 and we roll the dice, then our sum is going to be a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, or a 10. And each time I'm just adding the roll to the card that I chose. So if we choose a 5, our sum is going to be a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10, or an 11. Lastly, if we choose the card that's a 6, we're going to add that to our roll. So we're going to get a sum of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12. So when we look at our table, we can see that we can get a sum. The lowest sum that we could get is a 3, and the highest sum we could get is a 12. So we could get a sum of any possible numbers between 3 and 12. So we could write those out. We could count those. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That gets me to 8. 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 10 possible sums that I could get if I roll the die or I choose one of these cards. A little bit simpler way, if I think about subtracting, I can choose the cards from 3 to 12. If I subtract 12 minus 3, I get 9. But you're finding the difference between 12 and 3. So when you do that, you're not including the sum of 3. So if I want to find the difference, I get 9, but I'd have to add 1 back to that to account for I could get a sum of 3 that first one. So I could have a total of a sum, 10 possible sums. Let's look at the next example. It might not always be convenient to draw out a table, so let's think about the way we just did that one, thinking about the lowest sum and thinking about the highest sum. So in this particular case, let's think about the lowest sum. For my lowest sum, that would mean I choose the card that's a 1. I spin the spinner, that's a 1, and I roll a 1 on the dice. So that means that my lowest sum is 3. Let's think about the highest sum. My highest sum would mean I choose a card that's an 8. When I spin the spinner, I get a 6. And when I roll the die, I get a 6. So if I add those together, that means that my highest sum is a 20. So I could get all the sums between 3 and 20. So I want to find out how many sums that is. So I'm going to subtract 20 minus 3. That gives me 17. But I want to make sure that I include that first sum. So I'm going to add back a 1 to make sure I'm including that first one. So I have 18 possible sums in this situation. I hope that helps you understand a little bit about compound events. If you have any questions, please email me and I'll be glad to help you.